So everyone and their mother's freaking out over the new Joker movie, saying it's like the biggest disappointment of the year. And, that's just made me wonder if we could have or should have seen it coming, which begs the question, how good was the first Joker really? So yeah, I know hindsight is 2020 and all that, but let's go back to 2019 and see if we can give an actual honest critique of the first movie. Because now we know it's the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time, or at least it was until Deadpool and Wolverine did its thing. So the question is, did it do as well as it did because the movie was actually amazing, or was it because of all the media hullabaloo that surrounded it? Now, I don't know if a lot of you guys remember, but people were legitimately concerned that this movie was going to inspire a mass shooting, or not just one, like a lot of them, all over the damn place. I mean, like, Joaquin Phoenix lost his shit when he was asked about it in an interview. It was a whole thing. Now, normally I brush off this sort of stuff as mass media being stupid and scapegoating stuff because, well, they're stupid. I mean, Dungeons & Dragons didn't make anyone become a Satanist in the 80s, and no one has ever shot up grandma because they accidentally wandered into a Call of Duty lobby. But I do think it's kind of important to consider the discourse that surrounded Joker, because I think it's pretty freaking obvious that the controversy massively affected the movie's ticket sales, since talks about it were fucking everywhere. That a movie about one of the most iconic villains of all time could possibly inspire people into violence just added to the film's mythos. It made it into this notorious thing with people almost whispering to each other if they'd gone and seen it. The whole thing was also massively helped by the fact that the Joker himself has become this almost mythologized role for actors, what with it literally killing Heath Ledger and, Jared Leto trying way too hard. I'm not even gonna put any B-roll so you guys don't have to look at it.
Why should I care?
Because now there's a teeny little bit of me in you too, Bats.
You're welcome. Anyways, I guess it's now like, almost like how Hamlet's always been this role that's revered for its difficulty to the point that it's intimidating and whatnot. So yeah, all that turned into this crazy shitstorm that sold like hotcakes. What I'm trying to say with all of this is that the reason Joker was as popular as it wasn't because of its merit as a film, but because of all the bullshit surrounding it. Does that mean it was actually bad? Well, no, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't think it's bad at all. If it had been bad, it wouldn't have done as well as it did. But did I think it was the second coming of Jesus in clown makeup? Also, no. It was just meh. Now, I'm gonna get into that, but first we have to take a detour to New York City in the 70s. I'm talking Taxi Driver. At least for a minute, because you can't talk about Joker without mentioning Taxi Driver. I mean, there's no real debate here. Joker is Taxi Driver with the DC Comics makeover. Like, come on. Now, people always say that Joker is just an homage and not just a straight rip-off, and on the one hand, they're right. I mean, Robert De Niro is in the thing, and even Martin Scorsese was a producer at one point, but on the other, like if you're a Red Hot Chili Peppers fan and you realize that Danny California is just Mary Jane's Last Dance, like chord progression, lyrics...
Getting born in the state of Mississippi.
She grew up in Indiana town.
Everything. I mean, it might put a little bit of a damper on your ability or willingness to enjoy that song anymore, right? Maybe? Possibly? I don't fucking know you, whatever. I'm off topic. The point is, when something homages. Another thing, as hard as Joker does with Taxi Driver, the expectation is that the homagener is going to, at the very least, add something new. Like, there's nothing worse than copying a massively well-respected thing and then making something that's shittier, right? But look, if at this point you're worried this essay is just gonna devolve into Taxi Driver was better, don't worry, it won't. At least not yet, because I believe that the best way to really judge movies like Joker is by their own merits. So with that in mind, let's fucking get in there. So for the sake of brevity, I'm honestly not gonna touch on Joaquin Phoenix's performance beyond dude fucking killed it. I'm also not gonna talk about this movie's entertainment value because, well, no one ever accused the thing of being boring. It's got a few iconic moments, including the dance thing on the stairs, great cinematography, great costume design, yada yada yada. You've heard it all before. You've seen the mirror shot that looks like Batman's mask. Whatever. Far more interesting to me, at least, is the bad stuff. So how do we judge this, or pretty much any movie ever? Well, we look at what it sets out to do and whether it's successful at doing that. Now, Joker is trying to do a few things. The first is to try and get us to sympathize with an unsympathetic character. The second is to tell us that society is bad. And the third is to tell an origin story for one of the most iconic characters of all time. Alright, here we go, part fucking one, sympathy. So does Joker succeed in making us side with an unsympathetic character? You think I'm gonna say yes, right? You do, don't you? Of course, like how could I not? Well, guess what? It fucking doesn't. Here's why. So this is gonna sound like semantics, because it kind of is, sort of, but Arthur is not an unsympathetic character, like at all. If anything, he's the most sympathetic bastard I've ever seen be put to film. This movie is a giant premise fallacy, and I fucking hate that. An unsympathetic character is a person who sucks, a horrible human being that is completely irredeemable. Their actions are unjustifiable and often come from a place of pure selfishness. Does that describe the guy we see in Joker? No. You know who that describes? Walter motherfucking White. Honestly, I would say Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver also suits this description, but I'm gonna save that movie for another point, so here we go. First time you watch Breaking Bad, you're 100% on Walter's side the majority of the show, if not for all of it. You root for him, you think Skyler's a bitch, you think everyone in the show is being unreasonable, that Walt literally can do no wrong, all the while watching him completely fuck over Jesse, murder people in cold blood, and succumb to his ego and hubris. Every single person I have ever talked to who has watched that show a second, third, fourth time, myself included, suddenly gets a giant light bulb ding the second they restart the show. Because they know where this is going, what a monster Walter becomes. They see the signs from the beginning. They see how much of a giant selfish asshole this guy actually is, how his arrogance literally keeps him from accepting the treatment he needs when his ex-partner offers to pay for everything and solve his problems right then and there, all because he views accepting it as charity and as something that's beneath him. Walter is a horrible, horrible fucking person from the first episode of that show. But Arthur? Arthur's a goddamn saint in Joker, at least in the beginning. Like, the first thing we see is this guy getting the absolute shit kicked out of him for literally zero reason. He gets jumped, okay, but why? What the fuck valuable thing could this person clearly making minimum wage possibly have for a bunch of asshole teenagers to want to take his stuff? They literally say the words, take his stuff. Take his stuff. What stuff? The sign you broke? His big shoes? The fucking clown nose? The answer is nothing. But the movie doesn't care. That's not the point of the scene. The point is for you to look at this character and think, oh, poor little guy. And then they just keep building on that same notion, right? Next scene's Arthur talking to his therapist. We get a little bit of background. We get that he's been locked up before, that he's on 7 different types of medication, that he wants more, that he doesn't feel good about his situation. We see he's trying to be a stand-up comic, and we see that he wrote a pretty terrible joke. He's not only in a bad situation, but he's awful at what he wants to do. Awesome. And then? Well, right after that, we get him on a bus making this kid laugh, but then being yelled at over it for literally no reason. Why is this woman being mean to him? What possible reason could she have for doing so? Her child is laughing. Any normal human being would not act the way this woman is acting. So again, nothing is going well for him, and yet he's a nice fucking guy. He's in his 40s or his 30s or whatever, and taking care of his sick-ass mom, giving her baths and shit. Should I keep going? His coworkers tease him. He gets in trouble with his boss for something that wasn't his fault because one of his coworkers lied. How could you not feel bad for this dude? Everyone's out here talking about this movie having incredible writing for being able to pull this off, but dude, what? Are we so far up Joaquin Phoenix's ass we can't see the shitty writing on the walls? I mean, it's not really that shitty. It's just not all that special. Like, fuck, if Joaquin hadn't pulled off the performance of a goddamn lifetime, everyone would have hated this. They took the nicest guy on the planet and made the audience like him. Oh, however did they manage to pull that off? What creative writing wizardry, man? That's not Todd Phillips, it's fucking David Blaine out there wordsmithing away. Nothing about this is difficult to get an audience to do. There's less manipulation here than Harley has in the sequel. It's not difficult to cheer for Arthur when he kills Randall because he's a bully. It's not hard to cheer for him when he kills Murray because Murray's an asshole making fun of him. It's not difficult to cheer for Arthur when he kills his mom because by the time he does, we already know she's not his mom, she abused him, she lied to him, she's been lobotomized, and she's probably gonna die anyways. It's not difficult to cheer for Arthur when he kills the douchebags in the subway because they're douchebags. They're drunk and they beat the crap out of him, and beforehand it looks like they're about to assault some poor woman. The first time I saw this movie, I was convinced Arthur was about to have a hero moment. Let me level with you. You should never, ever, ever have the audience wondering if your main character is about to have a hero moment in a movie about the greatest villain of all time. And I know that a lot of people are going to say that that's the point, that this version of the Joker only kills people who were mean to him and that he was basically pushed to a breaking point, but I mean, that's just simplistic crap. Look, everyone in the world has terrible, terrible days. Some obviously worse than others, of course, but people break bad, pun very much intended, not because of the things that happen to them, but for other underlying reasons. Walter White doesn't become a fucking drug lord because he was diagnosed with cancer. His cancer is the catalyst that sets his actions in motion. The reason he does the things he does is because he's an arrogant and selfish piece of shit. And more importantly, that's what the show explores. And I know that Todd Phillips and the other fucking guy read The Killing Joke. I know they did because they referenced this shit all over this movie. From Arthur wanting to be a comedian to the literal line, "I had a bad day," when he's in his neighbor's house. You know what The Killing Joke is about? Like literally the most iconic Joker comic out there is all about the Joker torturing Commissioner Gordon in order to prove that it only takes a single bad day to make someone a killer. And guess what? In that comic, he's proven wrong. In this movie, oh no, let's just toss all that out the fucking window. It's the exact opposite. Like, how did that even happen? There's no real exploration of his mental illness at all in this movie. I mean, what is it? Anyone got one? I mean, one that the movie goes out and tells you about. Because I guarantee it's not fucking in there. There's no real exploration of mental health, no real inner thoughts and feelings that act as the reason for this guy's violence. It's just, I'm crazy and people were mean to me. God. Like, for a character exploration piece, this thing is like all plot. I'm sorry, but having a mental illness does not automatically constitute multidimensional characterization. If the only fucking thing we're shown about someone is, hey, I'm mentally ill, then guess what? You've only shown us he's mentally ill. It's one tiny side of that character. That's it. This happens because of how one-sided the movie is, and trying so hard to make sure the audience feels bad for this guy, the filmmakers forgot to actually explore who he is and what makes him really truly tick. We get a bunch of what I'd call hashtag mental illness moments, like dude getting in the fridge, but that's pretty much it, because the whole time all we're seeing is people in life just constantly dumping on him. And yeah, there's a theme throughout about Arthur not fitting the mold, or his humor not really aligning with what everyone else agrees is actually funny, but this all just reads to me as extremely thin and surface level stuff because the exploration of it just barely happens. We only see Arthur at a comedy club once, but why? Why does he only go once? Does he have stage fright? Is he scared people will judge him and hate him? Is he scared of showing what his funny side is for some reason? Like, yeah, he's barely starting out as a comedian, but why? Again, like, this isn't explored. We don't know these things because they're not talked about. Instead, we get a romance that goes literally nowhere and ends up just being a rug pull, hey, he's delusional, that has zero consequences at all. Like, seriously, nothing happens as a result of us finding out that this non-relationship relationship was all in his head. If it had been completely cut from the movie, nothing would change. Like, yeah, it's there to show that the guy is lonely, but do we really get an exploration of the effects of that loneliness? No, we don't. After Thomas Wayne, a guy who Arthur thought was his dad, literally punches him in the face and he finds out his mom lied to him and abused him for years, after he finds out he's completely alone, he goes into this woman's apartment and rather than seeing the consequences of him being there, rather than seeing how he handles a situation where he is legitimately completely alone for the first fucking time in his life and having a giant breakdown, we cut away to watch him laugh. Why? To add to some bullshit and unnecessary ambiguity? To just stress for the umpteenth time that this guy is crazy? I'm gonna move on or we'll be stuck here all day, so, you know, fuck it. Just like how the characterization is all surface level stuff, so is the whole we live in a society thing. Because again, what's the commentary here? If you defund mental health services, people who need certain medications to function won't be able to? Fucking color me shocked like Pepper from Dodgeball. Okay, look, this movie, or at least Arthur, operates within a very strictly defined moral dichotomy. If you're mean or bad in any way, well, then you die. If not, you're fine. It's not exactly a secret that he does this. I mean, he literally says that to Gary when he lets him go after killing Randall, and basically screams the same thing at Murray before shooting him. It's also why most people agree that Arthur didn't actually kill his neighbor, because while she was never actually in his life, she also was never mean or bad to him in any way. By the way, though, if this is true, it's yet another example of this movie being extremely simplistic with pretty much everything. Like, it's not exactly a stretch that a person like Arthur could possibly interpret her behavior as, you know, mean-spirited, but he doesn't, so I guess whatever. You know, now, here's the thing. People aren't like this. I mean, duh, right? People are complex, morally ambiguous animals that exist on a spectrum between good and bad. And I know that some people are going to say that just because Arthur sees this so simply doesn't necessarily mean that the movie expressly agrees with him, but the problem is it never actually does anything to prove him wrong. This is where I bring back Taxi Driver and Travis Bickle, because Travis's philosophy with regards to people's morals is just as simplistic as Arthur's. He believes the people he sees at night while driving his taxi are scum. Look at this scummy motherfuckers over here. He also believes that, he's ultimately the one that's got to clean up the streets. This is where Joker and Taxi Driver ultimately part ways, because Arthur doesn't really want to be part of any sort of movement, while Travis definitely does. But that's not really what I want to focus on. What's more important is the fact that Taxi Driver does everything it can to show us that Travis is completely wrong about what he's doing. I mean, you can see it within the big picture of the movie itself. One of the more important points that Taxi Driver is trying to make is that the violence that Travis inflicts on the pimps and gang members at the end, and which ultimately saves a 12-year-old Jodie Foster from prostitution, is the exact same violence that just as easily could have ended up killing a presidential candidate. Travis is lauded as a hero by the end of the movie, but we as an audience know that his violence actually doesn't come from a noble place, that he's a man who has been warped by loneliness and depression into a hateful lunatic. Who that violence ultimately targeted was all coincidental. What's important is the fact that Taxi Driver goes to pretty big lengths to condemn what Travis is doing. It shows us consistently, both through Travis's actions and through characters like Betsy, that the world that Travis lives in is actually hugely complex, and that Travis is completely wrong in viewing it as simply as he does. Joker, on the other hand, doesn't fucking do this. I know that I said that the idea that this movie might inspire mass shootings is fucking stupid, and I completely stand by that statement. But at the same time, I can totally understand why someone could let themselves believe that this movie would cause those things to happen. Because Joker does very, very little to show us that it condemns any of Arthur's actions. The movie does nothing to show us that Arthur's view of the world is oversimplified and corrupted by mental illness. It actually seems to agree with him. And that's why the message feels so flimsy and simple, because the movie is literally just saying, hey, society is bad, look what it did to this guy, instead of, hey, sometimes people can spiral into a self-affirmation bubble and convince themselves into violence. And the thing is, oversimplified views of the world are fine, they just have to be in the right place. Like, I'm fine with the simple black or white view of good and evil that a lot of media shows. Like, there doesn't really need to be a lot of complexity in something like The Empire from Star Wars: A New Hope. But in a movie that exists as a character study, that is meant to place the Joker in a real-world scenario, such a narrow and simple view of the world is just not good enough. I mean, it's why I feel like Randall was such a wasted character. Like, honestly, how much better could this movie have been if the guy had actually been nice and had actually been trying to help Arthur out the whole time? Instead of yet another asshole in this one-dimensional world, what if we'd had a guy whose intentions are genuine and good, but who accidentally gets Arthur in trouble? A guy who Arthur antagonizes in his mind that we believe is evil too, until Arthur finally kills him and it's revealed that no, Arthur was totally wrong about him. That he was just a good dude who cared and it got him killed. How much more terrifying would the Joker be at that point? How actually insane would he look? He'd actually seem paranoid and delusional instead of just fucking #crazy. Because, I'm sorry, but guy who only kills the mean people is more fucking close to an anti-hero than a villain. This isn't the Joker, it's the fucking Punisher with an eating disorder. Which brings me to the final part, the origin story of a madman. Now, okay, we know because of the sequel that Arthur isn't actually the Joker. I mean, like, putting aside what is probably the dumbest decision of all time, like, let's do a fucking Harry Potter movie that doesn't feature Harry Potter. Harry Potter, the crazy dude in Gotham, starring Newt Scamander. Now, I can't really tell if it was something that was planned out from the beginning, or if the Hangover man just saw everyone's theories about how Arthur Fleck just isn't the Joker, and he just went, fuck it, and ran with it. I mean, maybe if time wasn't linear, he somehow saw my video about the Rings of Power and thought, best not to kill some Krakens today, and just totally backpedaled, so I guess I owe him one for not ruining the mystery of one of the greatest characters of all time with a shitty movie. If you don't know what I'm talking about, link is down there. Also, I guess like and subscribe while you're at it if you haven't and you're having fun listening to me yell my opinions at you. Anyways, so yeah, this isn't the Joker. I mean, people have been saying that for a while now, citing the age difference between him and Bruce in the first movie and the fact that Arthur is in no way cunning or smart or scheming, like at all. To be fair to Todd Phillips, the guy always said that this was going to be his interpretation of the Joker. And I'm not really going to fault him for making something that was trying to be unique, but yeah, I don't know. As far as Joker stuff goes, this is a far cry from the clown prince of crime, right? Like, honestly, I think one of the more important through lines that the Joker has over and over again is the fact that he is always proven wrong. At least that's what I can gather from what I know about him. Maybe someone that knows more can tell me otherwise in the comments, but I mentioned this before with The Killing Joke, where his attempt at turning Commissioner Gordon into a killer just doesn't end up working out. Or even in The Dark Knight, where instead of blowing each other up, the people in the two fairies decide not to push the buttons at all. And I think this is the big issue that I personally had with the first Joker film, because it felt like a fundamental misunderstanding of what the character in most of his, I guess you could call incarnations, represents. You are supposed to feel bad for this guy. I mean, Batman frequently does, but not because he's a victim of something around him, but because his oversimplified view of things causes him to act in ways that don't ultimately make sense. Like, the actual joke around the Joker isn't that things are chaotic and nonsensical, it's that he's fundamentally wrong about what he thinks is funny, which is funny in turn, you know, like layer after layer. It's like a fucking jokeception. So in conclusion, what do we actually have? A mildly entertaining story about the Joker that's not really a Joker story, that Todd Phillips, now confirmed, is indeed not a Joker story at all, just some fucking guy for some reason. A story about a very sympathetic man who is made out to look sympathetic, and an extremely easy and simple, not discussion, just statement about how society is bad and mental illness is a problem that became insanely popular because Joaquin Phoenix gave a performance that was so good, no one noticed the writing wasn't great, because the media went crazy thinking people would shoot up theaters, and because it basically just used one of the world's most iconic characters to boost his popularity and practically for no other reason. And look, I really can't resist the final dig at the sequel, because I mean, yeah, it really was awful, but writing something that's based off another thing, the way Joker so egregiously does with Taxi Driver, is substantially easier than writing something completely original. All your story beats have been written down for you, and you know they work. It's like slightly altering a proven concept, like Pepsi and Coca-Cola. Did one copy the other? I don't know. I don't know sodas. So, is it a surprise that things went up in flames when they went off book? Kind of like with a certain show, you know, with a certain chair, wink wink? I don't know, maybe not. I do think it's funny that the first Joker leans so heavily on other work and the sequel doesn't even have a single original song. Like, is that a coincidence? I don't know, maybe? Do with that information what you will. But anyways, now that I've very calmly stated my opinion about the first Joker, you know, practically fucking whispered it, I ask you, are we really all that surprised that the sequel fucking sucked?